place for conversations. SDAQ&A. You're safe to speak your truth. Common ground, shared beliefs with lots of room for disagreement. Tell us all what you believe and let us see if we can challenge you. From all paths coming here to share their stories. Some have left this global church, some remain and defend her. Where are you on the path? Does Ellen still appeal to you? SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. 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 Oh, SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. SDAQ&A, you You love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the the same ever again. You love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again.
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. It's great to see some of you back that haven't been here for a while. Welcome. Great to see you. What did you think of that little CD Brooks comment there? I thought that was disgusting. Let's just have a quick listen to it again.
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Wow, incredible. What do you guys think of that? And hey, as I said, welcome. Good to have you all here as always. Same time tomorrow, we will be back with another interesting guest. And then the next day, same time, we have Good News Fellowship on our YouTube channel. And Danny Big will be sharing how God loves creativity. And creativity is infused within us. But today we go back. And by the way, thanks everyone for your support. You can support what I'm doing here through paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. And yeah, it's wonderful to get a little bit of cash through. Helps me pay for the platforms, etc. I got a bill yesterday for $700 for Restream, Australian dollars. And yeah, that came out of the blue. So that's the annual fee, though, $734 or something like that. So yeah, if you've got a few dollars you can throw my way, it goes to all of that stuff. And talking about sponsorship, I really want to thank Angela Lima for sponsoring today's program. Just trying to find, there it is, which is the replay of season 2, episode 31 with George Knight. And I tell you what, it was an absolutely fascinating conversation. And yeah, I just want to thank Angela Lima for sponsoring today's program. I will thank her a few times during the program because her donation and sponsorship of this program goes a long way towards being able to cover costs. And a few of you watching, I can see as well, have donated in the last week or two, and I really appreciate that. There's been about $200 in the last fortnight that has come through, and I really appreciate that. And Angela Lima has sponsored today. If you'd like to sponsor any of season 2, this very special series that we are now uploading for the first time to YouTube, you can for only $150. Pick an episode. We're 31 into 86. Quite a few of them have gone already. But if you have a book or a link or a channel you'd like to sponsor, let me know. And you can be a sponsor of the show. So yeah, thank you again to today's sponsor, Angela Lima. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Angela. And I hope you get to watch and enjoy today's program. So let's get into it. Sit back and relax and enjoy this incredible interview. I remember George kept saying, Peter, you're asking the wrong questions. You're asking the wrong questions. But about an hour and a half in, something shifted. And I said to George, look, I'm interested in what you think, not your defense of the Adventist Church. What are your personal thoughts? And he warmed after that, and the last half an hour was very informative and very interesting and very relaxed. But up until then, it got a little bit heated at times. Anyway, I really thank George Knight for coming on the show 5 years ago. Those listening to the podcast, I'm talking to you right now from 2025. Where we are having a bit of a retrospective, and we're putting these incredible interviews of season 2 onto YouTube so the rest of the world can watch and enjoy. And yeah, George Knight, if you're watching, thank you so much for being on the program. I really enjoyed our conversation, especially the last half an hour. And you're welcome back anytime. Sit back, everybody, and enjoy. Let's take you back in time, 5 years to 2020. Hello and welcome to SDA Q&A. I'm Peter Dixon, and today my very special guest is Dr. George Knight. How are you, George?
Doing good, thank you.
It's great to have you here. We've been looking forward with great anticipation ever since you agreed to the interview. So thank you very much for taking the time today.
Okay.
What time is it, and where are you calling from?
Me?
Yeah.
5:15.
Oh, okay.
West Coast, U.S.
That's
Oregon.
that's not too bad. For some reason, I thought it was more like 9 p.m. your time.
Nah, I have to be back on the East Coast, and even then it'll only be 8:15.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, I'm a musician, so
About 9 in Bermuda.
so it's just after 10 a.m.
Ah, good morning.
Good morning. And I'm a musician. My brain doesn't usually kick in till mid-afternoon. Now, someone we interviewed the other day was saying that apart from Ellen White, you have written more books than any other Adventist. Is that true?
I don't know. I've written a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's an addiction. I'm trying to get the victory. I swore off writing books in 2012, and I've written about 7 or so since then. No, it's 9 since then.
9. Well,
But I told my wife I don't think I'll write one next year. I got a couple started, but you got to quit sometime.
why?
Well, because your brain turns to jelly. You don't want everybody to know it.
That's when you get a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
How many books do you think you've written on an estimate? Like
Well,
published.
About 50, and I've edited about 50.
Right. And how long ago did you retire? Did you say it was 2012?
I retired in 2006.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I had no big desire to keep on working, although my retirement hasn't worked out very well.
You're as busy as ever.
Yeah, it's been constant travel and writing,
Yeah.
but you can't fool all the people all the time, and it's best to have people still think you got all your marbles. Uh, I think I've still got most of mine, but they're getting easier to count.
Well, I think you were mentioning before we came on to the program that your mother is 99 soon?
99 next week. My parents were married for 76 years.
Incredible.
Dad passed away at 97.
So I think you've got a lot of good years ahead of you. We can expect at least another 20 years of George Knight material.
Well, maybe.
No, well, we're certainly glad of the addiction you have of writing, and I know in leading up to the interview, a lot of people have emailed me and expressed their gratitude that of your being on the planet and helping to release a lot of people from a fear-based Adventism to a more grace based approach, and to also kind of putting things into perspective, particularly with Ellen White.
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of it is just kind of an existential thing. I was raised agnostic, became an Adventist when I was 19. 3 months later, promised God I'd be the first perfectly sinless Christian since Jesus. Went off, studied ministry, went to seminary, pastored. 1969, resigned from the ministry, decided to leave the church. I have been deep into last generation theology. It wasn't working. I wasn't perfect, and certainly my congregation wasn't. And I felt it was a big hoax. So I wandered in the far country for about 6 years. Stayed away from my Bible, stayed away from prayer whenever possible, and got converted. to Jesus in 1975 through a series of events. And next year, I guess it was 76. Yeah, 76. I went to teach. I'm a philosopher of education. I didn't do my doctoral work in theology or church history. I wanted to get as far away from all that gobbledygook as possible. And much of my writing is really my own search for the meaning. I mean, I'll be frank with you. When I was in my holiday from active church for those 6 years, I still knew that if there was anything to the Bible, the Adventists were closest approximation. And I'll say it that way. And there is no such thing as a perfect grasp of the truth. But I felt that the Adventists had the closest grasp. And when I really got the gospel, no question to me, I was going to be an Adventist.
Mm-hmm. So the era...
I never backed up on either my Adventism or my gospel understanding.
Yeah, good. I'm keen to unpack that a little bit more, as in the positive nature of your understanding of the gospel and Adventism. Back to where you were feeling the desire to be the good, perfect Adventist. What year was that you kind of committed to that endeavor?
Well, I was in the fall of, I was baptized, I think, in September 1961.
Right.
20th birthday was the next month. I was baptized by Malcolm Maxwell up in Fortuna, California. And the next week, actually, I moved to the South Bay area down south of San Francisco. And I was working structural steel. And I looked around and the church was all messed up. You guys hadn't done it right. And I had a lot of energy. And one day when I was up there swinging around in that rigging, I promised God out loud that I would be the first perfectly sinless Christian since Jesus. And I had no doubt that I could do it. I'd spent 19 years being evil, and man, it worked very well. And I figured being good was just heading the other direction. And that was definitely sincere. I went from about 160 pounds to about 120 pounds in about 3 months because I discovered it was wrong to eat almost everything. You couldn't have got me to touch a candy bar. I think a little of that might help now.
The Pastor Maxwell, was that Arthur's son?
Yeah, that was, and Arthur Maxwell, it was just my wife and I that were baptized, and Arthur Maxwell happened to be there that Sabbath and preach. It was a great sermon. He was a tremendous storyteller.
Yeah, that's Adventist royalty right there.
I got writing in my blood when I got baptized into the church.
Yeah.
Arthur speaking.
And do you think at that time, like Questions on Doctrine had come out a couple of years earlier, do you think at that time Adventism was definitely leaning still towards that idea of perfectionism being possible?
Yeah, that was, Questions on Doctrine had come out, but it hadn't really infiltrated to the Adventist public.
Yeah.
And of course, I knew nothing about it as a young convert, but I did go down to the San Jose, Central California, what they used to call Book and Bible House, and I wanted to buy, a biography of Illinois. Well, they didn't have one; they had life sketches, and they had this thing called Christian Home Library. Well, Illinois had the majority of the titles, but the next person was M.L. Andreasen.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, this guy must be something else. And so I bought some Andreasen books and thought, man alive, one of these days, maybe I could write something. I had no idea that I'd end up on the opposite side of the coin from Andreasen, but, I just thought, but you've got to understand that this guy, M.L. Andreasen, who we're going to come to most likely, was the most powerful influence in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the 1940s. But he was being squeezed out in the 1950s. And Questions on Doctrine, which basically assigns him to the lunatic fringe, was the final straw. And it's unfortunate because questions on doctrine basically is pretty solid. There's only one place that's really got a problem. I mean, it may have problems, but I mean, really serious that Andreasen can complain about. And that was the false heading he put in that Christ had a sinless human nature.
Mm.
That's an Ellen White compilation. She said just the opposite. He's got a sinful human nature, but didn't mean what sometimes we think that means. Anyway, that's not for right now.
More of a propensity.
Well, from the very first, I saw this guy Andreasen as a superstar in the Adventist Church. And the fall of 1962, I went to Pacific Union College to do ministerial. Worked there for 2 years, had a call to Central California Conference, the San Francisco Central Church, to be the associate. And D.E. Venden, uncle to the Venden brothers, said, yeah, you got 2 years of college. That's all you need. That's all I got. And I would have stayed out of college, except they wanted to make me sing an evangelist in a citywide crusade where we just had the general conference. It was a big deal, and I can't sing. So I went back to college, did the next 2 years in 1 year, and was off to seminary.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had an interesting interview with Dr. Lyndon Rogers, who's a much-loved Avondale College scientist and lecturer up there. In it, at the end of the interview, he shared a letter that Neil Wilson had written to Pearson, I think was the previous president of the GC, to him.
Yeah, Neil was NAD president, and Bob Pearson was the president of the GC.
And in that letter, it's kind of revealed that the real concern they had about Des Ford and the Glacier View, which was about to happen, was more that they were worried the people would lose their faith or confidence in Ellen G. White and her authenticity. You have spent a good deal of time studying Ellen G. White. Do you think that they were correct in assessing that she may lose her authority with the kind of questioning that Des and Cottrell and others were bringing to the table?
Only if you take it in the context of Ronald Numbers and Walter Ray. Those were the real threats to Ellen White. Des had a misunderstanding of Ellen White, and that is that we got such positions as the investigative judgment from Ellen White, but not anybody had done much work in historical theology and Adventism at that time. And so, people made all kinds of statements about the investigative judgment and all kinds of things that had no historical base. But one of Des's claims was we got it from Ellen White's writings. And if so, that's news to the early Adventists who wouldn't have accepted it if it was. Yeah. In fact, it wasn't even developed by Adventists. It was developed by Millerites.
Yeah.
And later adopted by Adventists.
Her early visions were confirmative of their adoptions of it, though, wouldn't you say?
Say that again.
Her visions would often confirm beliefs that other earlier Adventists had come to, and her visions confirmed their beliefs in the structuring of the investigative judgment, wouldn't you say?
The investigative judgment was not a big issue. It became a big issue in the 1980s, but James White fought the thing. And as late as 1850, he was saying the judgment is 1,000 years, and that's it. I don't want to hear any more about anything else. The first Adventist to pick it up was Joseph Bates. Actually, was developed before the Great Disappointment. The idea was developed by Litch, Josiah Litch, in 1841 and 1842. Picked up right after the Disappointment by Enoch Jacobs and a couple of others. It would be a couple of years before Bates would actually pick it up. and Ellen White would pick it up about the same time. No, Ellen White picks it up later than that. Ellen White's first statement that I know is in early writings at the commencement of the Sabbath, January 5, 1849. Then I saw that Jesus would not leave the most holy place until every case was decided, either for salvation or destruction. As far as I know, that's the first statement we have on Ellen White. James White does not accept it probably any sooner than 1854. He has it for sure by January of 1857. And that month, for the first time, the term investigative judgment is used in evidence in any literature, because a fellow by the name of E. Everts on January 1 wrote an article in the Review and talked about the pre-Advent judgment and called it the investigative judgment. 4 weeks later, on January 29, 1857, James White will pick up the terminology and use it. After that, not only is White in the investigative judgment camp, but that becomes a part of Adventist vocabulary.
Yeah, and by the 1860s, Ellen would have suggested this and confirmed it via vision, that it was now a central pillar of Adventism.
Well, she would say that the understanding of the sanctuary, which includes, I suppose, the judgment, certainly she would say that the sanctuary is a pillar. I can't remember her ever saying that the investigative judgment was a pillar.
Okay. But I guess by inference...
All the pillars were in place that she called pillars.
Yeah.
By January of 1847. All of them, including the sanctuary doctrine, all of them developed by non-Sabbatarians and people who never became Seventh-day Adventists.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that she in any way was coming up with this idea, or that James didn't oppose it and then agree with it. I'm just suggesting that she had visions that confirmed, looking back, that these things that she called pillars were actual truths.
Yeah. But like I said, I don't think she ever called the investigative judgment a pillar. She did call four things pillars.
Yeah.
Sanctuary, Sabbath, state of the dead, and second coming.
What was the first one? Sorry, it cut out.
Sanctuary.
Right.
Which is related to the investigative judgment, but not equivalent to. The sanctuary was accepted a lot sooner than the concept of a pre-Advent or investigative judgment by the Sabbatarian group.
Well, because one of the things I've had trouble pinning down when I read about the investigative judgment and the sanctuary as written in the Great Controversy, I see a fairly defined Andreessen kind of view of the sanctuary and the investigative judgment accepted there. But it seems to be quite different to what people are saying now the sanctuary is, and now it seems to be more in line with what Des would have said. What was that?
In what sense do you feel it was Andreessen-like?
Well, the type of Adventism that led to you desiring to be a perfectionist is represented in the Great Controversy.
Yeah, in what sense?
Oh, probation closing, getting ready for Jesus to return, standing without your Christ as an intercessor.
Yeah, but you got that third one is the crucial one. Standing without an intercessor. She never ties it to things like that has many interpretations, and Andreessen gave one. And I don't think that's the one you find in the great context of the Great Controversy. I don't find final generation theology anywhere. I find quotations that can be taken out of context,
right,
pasted together as final generation theology. In Ellen White.
In what way was Andreessen's view of the sanctuary different to the Great Controversy's view of the sanctuary?
Number one, Andreessen was not a systematic theologian, was not a systematic thinker. Ellen White was not a systematic theologian either. She was basically saying what they believed. Andreessen went way, way beyond anywhere where Ellen White was.
Right.
And, I mean, you take the sanctuary service, you read that thing. For him, everything is works. Even the atonement is Jesus substituted his works for ours.
Mm.
That's a substitution.
Mm.
I'm sorry, you're not going to get any of that stuff out of Ellen White. Now, like I said before, the two or three of the strongest pillars that he gets from Ellen White are isolated quotations. Although one of them is given 3 or 4 times, and that's standing without an intercessor. Well, sure, they're going to be standing without an intercessor. Read the context. Probation is closed. There is no more intercession. Sanctuary is shut up. That's not where Andreasen took it. And then, of course, the one that sent me off in a tizzy, when the character of Christ is perfectly reproduced in his people, then, and we get all concerned because, we got perfection in the Roman Catholic sense, which came right out of Plato, that it means something that doesn't change. Therefore, a person that doesn't change must be sinless because, we get rid of all these sins. That's not the way the Bible uses the term or Ellen White.
Mm.
That doesn't mean you can't get some freako quotations. I mean, people can do strange things with my writings.
Yeah.
But if you read the context,
Yeah.
it's the same as Matthew 5, be therefore perfect. The context is developing in the love of God. Read page 65, 67, 68, and right above it on page 69 about perfectly reproducing the character of Christ, you have the fruits of the Spirit. And then comes that famous paragraph. And it's taken out of context and given a definition of sin that is a series of actions. And if you've got a series of actions that led you into sin, then and sin is defined as an action only, then the series of actions will. Andreas makes this very plain in his topic on the final generation in the sanctuary service. It's a series of actions that clean up our lives. And it's really, in church history, it's a Pelagian view that human nature never fell. We all have choices, and we can do right on our own. And if you do it, you're going to be perfect. You get a whole generation of those people, man. I mean, sinlessly perfect. You get a whole generation of them. But even Andreasen messed up. He's got one chapter in there and said, everybody's messed up, but God had one, and that was Jesus. That's all it takes. Even Andreasen couldn't stay away from the gospel totally.
Yeah, that's good. I guess I'm kind of trying to tease out and work out why so many Andreasens come out of the fertile ground claiming to be receiving their knowledge from Ellen White and the early founders. How can so many of them be mistaken?
Yeah, because of the way we do theology. We do theology based upon Ellen White. I've written a book, I just published it. It came out of Prophets and Conflicts between Joseph Smith and Ellen White. Joseph Smith was superior to Scripture. Ellen White said, don't use me for doctrine. Don't use me as a Bible commentary. We have misused the woman from the day she was, actually, we did pretty good. The Seventh-day Adventist Church did not rely upon Ellen White until the 1880s. You can read the early stuff, it's just not there. They were quoting Ellen White as authority. They knew her, and they knew what she was claiming, and they knew what her husband had claimed for her. But they were definitely doing it by the 1880s.
What year was it that Ellen White had the vision about the number of moons around Jupiter that convinced Joseph White that she was a prophet?
Joseph Bates. That would have been about 1845.
So when he was not convinced of her prophetic skills, and that convinced him, regardless that she was incorrect, that's not the point. Why did he need convincing?
That's the point in one sense.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to make Ellen White walk on all fours. She had a mission. God gave her, we say that she had a vision, God gave her the vision. Yeah, it wasn't scientifically correct, but it was correct in terms of what they knew at that time.
That's right.
Are related to mission, even when they deal with history, science, other aspects of human knowledge. And yet we want to make it all infallible and inerrant.
That's what I mean, though. I don't mind. I get that she was speaking about moons that were the accepted scientific view of the day. I don't question. I'm not, oh, you got it wrong at all. I'm not thinking
Yeah,
that.
but see, the point is, she did have it wrong.
Yeah, she had it wrong.
On every other statement, we want to make sure, we want to say, oh, she's, she's an authority on. No, she never claimed to be an authority on science. She never claimed to be an authority on history, and yet we have made her an authority on everything.
Why did she want to convince him, though, that she was right with that? And he said, look, how does she know this? Has she read science? And she indicated that, no, I've not read anything about the current thinking of the day. Why was she so keen to convince him of her authority and prophetic skill?
Well, it depends on how humanistic you want to make this. From maybe from her perspective, she'd say, well, God wanted him. She saw herself, I think, as a channel. We might see her, I don't personally, I don't see her as a manipulator. I think she could manipulate, but when she was in ministry, I believe that, God, I think that God could lead her, and God saw that Joseph Bates was an honest guy and could be useful.
So that puts her in a position then of being someone that he from then on respected as having authority over anything that he might put forward towards her. So therefore she is in a position of authority quite early on, if that was not 1849.
Well, I would say this. It's one thing to look back at Ellen White. It's another thing to live with her. We have it all figured out, how slick it was. I think it was a rough road. I don't think that, I think that when I became an Adventist in the 1960s, Ellen White had more mindless obedience than took place during the 1800s.
One of the great things I love about your writings is how you place her into that human framework. She was a human. You also are very good at putting her into the context of her times.
Well, if you'll read some of the biographies in the biography series I've been editing, I think we have 13 volumes now. Certainly Gil Valentine on Andrews, that's a whoosh.
Yeah.
And Barry Land on Uriah Smith. My comments are that it's easy to revere a long dead prophet than to live with to exist with a living one.
And I guess what I'm trying to do is tease out why so many Adventists seem to continue to get it wrong. I'm not challenging you or her or her context. I'm just sensing that for some reason the garden of Adventism produces quite a lot of plants that lean towards that perfectionism kind of theology, and I'm trying to work out where are they getting this from. If we could all see it in context and see it clearly, why, and people like yourself address this issue and keep putting it back in front of people's on the table for them to see, why are they continually getting it wrong? And I'm trying to work out today a little bit about how she changed her views on investigative judgment, the sanctuary, over time.
Do you think she did?
Sorry?
Do you think she did on the investigative judgment?
No, I don't think she did personally. But I think the people like to say she did, because that then says to people who are last generation theology now, for example, you can say, oh, well, you're just interpreting her older statements. She changed as she went along.
Well, I don't. She changed. I've got a chapter in my latest book on Ellen White and change as clarification, development, and reversal. She did change, but to the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure she ever changed on the investigative judgment. See,
No.
the problem is,
I don't think she did.
Adventists. Well, we had a guy that wanted to do a PhD on the topic of the investigative judgment. With the development. I'm sorry, there's no development. James White finally accepts it. 10 years after the Great Disappointment, That's a development, but other than that, there's very little development. I mean, there has been since the 1980s. I think that Des has helped us to refine our understanding. Personally, I was gonna write a book one of these days called "Judgment is Gospel." Judgment is good news. I mean, God's people can hardly wait for it. They're crying under the altar. When are we going to have the judgment? And all the way through Scripture, judgment is for God's people. But I still remember one of the first times I went to an Adventist church. I was in the Army, and there was this old lady. Now, this was in a youth group. I'd met this girl, and she went to church, and I thought, maybe I'll go to church. And she had a long, bony finger. She was probably, 40 years old. I don't know. But, when you're 18, that's pretty old. And I remember she got her finger out. It was long and bony. And she pointed right at everybody's nose. And she said, "You better lay awake at night. And you better think of every sin you've ever committed. Because if you miss one of them, you're going to go to some place that's mighty hot." That's not the way she said it, but and I walked out and these people are nuts. But yet that's the final generation understanding.
But didn't Ellen White say that? You've got to be so careful to not forget any sin. You'll be judged for the sins you even forget. Sorry?
Remember what she said, where she said it. That's found in the Great Controversy. Something not exactly like that, okay? She was talking basically to a lot of antinomians. And she's trying to say, look, the law of God is important. It has been all the way down through church history. It's going to be at the climax of church history, according to Revelation 12:13, as she develops in the Great Controversy. She's getting people to say, look, once you're saved, always saved, or the Methodist approach, some of the other approaches, the law doesn't count. And she had a mission in that book to bring people to self-awareness that they better be thinking about their life in relationship to the law. Now, can you quote that? Not with what she had in mind, I think, but can it be quoted to fit into last generation theology? Yeah. So can a whole lot of other stuff if it's taken out of the context of what the mission of the book is.
But not even if you take it as extreme as last generation theology. If you just take it as like I remember being a 7-year-old, was very concerned, going to sleep, asking God to help me remember sins that I'd forgotten because I knew they would be included in weighing my righteousness up. So where does a young 7-year-old get that from, and why do so many of my peers have that kind of memory?
Because every question you've asked so far has been rooted in the Adventist DNA, particularly in final generation DNA, which really overtook the church in the 30s.
Yeah, good. Well, that's what I'm trying to work out. Where is this?
Grandparents, and now we're reading all this stuff through that.
So you're saying that the DNA is more of the DNA that expressed...
for Adventists.
Yeah, so she wasn't meaning that.
This was an evangelistic book, and she's trying to say, people, start thinking about your life in relation to the law, because the law is important, has been all the way down through history, and it's going to climax as important. But then with this interpretive view, we get all of this stuff, just like Ellen White's statements on perfection. I mean, and Bible statements on perfection, straight out of the medieval church. The definition, our definition of sin, transgression of the law. You know what? I was going to write a book. There's never been a theology of sin by an Adventist. I was, up until a couple of months ago, I thought, maybe I'll write that book. I've got it all outlined. Sin is not the transgression of the law.
I love that.
No, and First John, that gives that passage. That word nomos, law, is not even in the Greek. In fact, I think the only English translation is the KJV. What the Bible says, in fact, the First John doesn't use the word nomos at all. What the Bible has is lawlessness. And when you get the lawlessness, then you can deal. I've written about this. I can't do it here, but when you get the lawlessness, then you get to the perfectionistic statement down in verses 8 and 9 of chapter 4, which, if you have Jesus, you cannot sin. Doesn't mean you can't commit an act of sin. It means you cannot live a life of lawlessness. That's the definition. But an act of sin, the aorist tense in the first chapter, if you say you don't sin, you're a liar. If you say you don't sin, you make God a liar. If you have an act of sin, confess it, and he's faithful and just and will forgive you and cleanse you from all unrighteousness. But you see, we take these things. Now, I have to admit, if I write that book, I'm going to have to deal with a statement, I believe it's in great controversy, that sin is the only transgression of the law is the only definition of sin. But that's not the way Ellen White writes in general.
Yeah, that's an important book. Can you make sure you write that book?
Here's the whole thing. I wrote Myths in Adventism, the myth of the inflexible prophet, to show that Ellen White, in one context, will say this, next context, she'll say just the opposite. You know why? And I demonstrate there, because people take her to extremes. So she says a strong statement because she's got a knothead, and she's got to get it into his head, or her head, and she blasts him. And then the next month, she finds out people are taking that statement, and she's got to say just the opposite. And we take all of Ellen White's statements as if they have no context, historically or literarily.
It's a big mistake to make, isn't it?
Oh, massive. And you have to do just more. I with the great controversy itself, I have to say, what in the world is the purpose of that book? It's an evangelistic book. It wasn't written for Adventists. Now, the first edition was, but she revised it, and she continued to revise it. The right wing doesn't like that because she got softer and softer on Catholics. I think she even liked them.
Yeah.
The Ellen White, my view is the Ellen White that we've created, and the Ellen White who Daniels and other Adventist pioneers had to deal with are two different people. I have a book called Walking with Ellen White. Did she ever, how did her marriage go? You got two strong-minded people in one little house. They may not decide to live together all the time. What about her kids? They all turn out perfect? Did she ever smile? Did she ever laugh? Did she like telling a joke? Did she ever tell a lie? We want Ellen White to be better than that. That's actually my next book. Knight's Revised Standard Vegetarian Version of the Bible. You think I'm going to give you a Bible, if I wrote it, that's got all the main characters messed up? I mean, Abraham sold his wife out to a harem twice. I didn't get away with that once.
Let's not get into David.
And he got a bunch of camels. David, not only an adulterer, but a mass murderer, got rid of Uriah's whole battalion. And then Peter put a curse on his Lord and a whole lot of other stuff. I'd clean all that. I'd give you the vegetarian version. But the problem is nobody could identify with it because we're Abrahams and Davids and Peters but the Bible prophets are all messed up, but Adventists don't want Ellen White to be messed up at all. She has to walk on air. That's part of the fiction, the mythology.
And you're saying that this DNA that eventuated in my generation and even your generation of waking up at night in a cold sweat, that DNA really came post Ellen White's death, but was not really found pre her dying and can be taken from her writings? I
wouldn't say
when seen in context.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find it in context in the sense that the Adventism we knew earlier on. This had to await the powerful, and I mean powerful, theology of M.L. Andreasen. You either loved it or you hated it. It placed Adventism at the center of the universe, and Christ couldn't even come until you had a final generation. God was dependent upon the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This was the kind of theology that basically took over the church, took over our writings. We've got phrases. They're all interpreted within that framework even to this day. And when you take Des, or you take Hilarandel, you take Heppenstall, you take myself, you take others, And we've been fighting that for 50 years. And
Yeah.
we got I think some high people in the General Conference would like to reintroduce the stuff.
Well, that's what I was going to say is Neil Wilson was trying to protect this kind of Adventism, and they needed to get rid of Des to protect
No. Neil
this
Wilson brought me.
post-Ellen White and Adventism, the
Neil
post her
Wilson,
death.
Neil Wilson brought me to the very front to combat this final generation theology. That was in '88.
Tell us about that.
But I often wondered how his son got the other theology. Neil had his, he brought me in to combat this sinless perfection stuff. That's where the book I Used to Be Perfect came from. He invited me to give the lectures at the '88 General Conference session, annual council in Nairobi.
Oh, fascinating.
One of my good friends knew the family well, and basically said that Ted picked up his father's administrative style and his mother's theology.
Mm.
But I'm not going to read. I'm not going to read all that stuff into Neil. I think this is part of what needs to be done. We need to clarify the air. And as I look at the slate of people you've been interviewing, you've got them pretty much all on one side.
Yeah, I'm trying very hard to get all sides, but the leaders...
Woody Whidden is somebody you need to interview.
Who is?
Woodrow Whidden.
Okay. I'll get people watching to write that down.
Yeah, Woodrow Whidden.
Yeah.
Woody's what we call him, but he's got it pretty straight, and he in his biography of Wagoner, in the introduction says, when I was a young guy, I mean, this was all, what's Des Ford stand for and all this.
Mm.
And some of us have come at this from a Wesleyan perspective. Too many others seem to think that we belong to the Calvinistic or the Lutheran branch of the Reformation. No. We're Anabaptist. That's one of our roots. We're Arminian. We are Methodist, Wesleyan, I should say. Ellen White was Wesleyan, and she used the language that way. She's got all the Wesleyan concepts, including prevenient grace, the grace that goes before saving grace. But we've evaluated, in fact, when I went to seminary in the 60s, I took a course in Calvinism. I could have taken one in Lutheranism, but anything to do with the roots of Adventist theology was really not there. The Anabaptist approach was basically, we're not going to stop where Luther stopped. We're going to go to the Bible. And that was picked up in the early 19th century. Hold on, my stupid phone.
That's all right.
I thought I had that thing off. Well, I'll turn it on now. Okay, now nobody can talk. I mean, you guys can talk.
No, that's fine. So why was Neil, this letter to Pearson, why was he, which Ellen White was he saying that they don't want Des to put in jeopardy? I'm
not even sure where that statement comes from.
Yeah, I'll try and
you mentioned it earlier on, but I don't see any real validity in it. Right. By 1980, Neil had already realized that we had to come to an understanding of Ellen White. I think it's January 1980. He publishes it in a review, and Don McAdams he couldn't believe that the General Conference president was saying that, because he'd been trying to tell him. As McAdams did his work before Numbers and Walter Ray. But after the Walter Ray investigation, Neil came right out and said, no, we've got to. And I presented a radical view of Ellen White at the 1988 meetings. Well, it's all published in the book Angry Saints.
Angry Saints, yeah.
One of them was Issues and Authority, and Des loved it. He wrote me and published actually that I'd solved this problem. Well, actually, Des and I weren't coming from the same place, so I didn't really solve it, but I was happy that he liked the book.
Yeah. In 1919, the famous conference where the minutes were lost, it seems like Daniels and Prescott were raising these very issues that you talk of, post Ellen's death, they were thinking, look, she could be put up on a pedestal soon. We need to address these things. They talk about the changes that have been made in the Great Controversy. Do you think if those minutes hadn't been hidden and Ellen White had been addressed in context and her humanness, that the mythological Ellen White wouldn't have been created?
It could have gone a long ways in that direction, but given the human perversity of the perversity of the human mind, people are going to find ways to mess it up anyway. One of her best friends was S. N. Haskell, and he was as far away from her understanding of inspiration as anybody could be. But in my book that came out last year, Ellen White's Afterlife, I showed the views, the first chapter, the wonderful world of Ellen White in the 1960s, the stuff I was taught in college. Ellen White, I demonstrate in the second chapter, Ellen White never believed any of that stuff, and neither did Daniels and those closest to her. But there was always exceptions. A.T. Jones was one, and when A.T. Jones found out she wasn't as fanatical as him, he flipped out. She's got to be a false prophet, because he was an ideologue. It was all black and white to Jones. Ellen White was a pragmatist and a missiologist. We want to make her a historian, a scientist. No. Any information she had was only to get moving the mission of the church. When we understand what she's all about, the purpose of Ellen White, but evil and misunderstanding has a way of reinventing itself every day.
And you believe that Ellen White did have supernatural visions from God?
I think it's pretty hard to explain some of the stuff away. Now, in terms of how that relates to her books, that's a different issue. She had no problem whatsoever taking material from other books. In fact, she even recommended the same books in Review and Herald and the Signs of the Times and said it's good reading. It came as a surprise to my generation that Ellen White took material. That's because they didn't read, they didn't understand their history, and they didn't even read what was in the Great Controversy in the introduction. She said, I took that stuff where I could get it. What she saw was the Great Conflict view.
She put that in a later edition of it, but it wasn't in the earlier editions.
I believe it was in the 88 edition, not the, I don't think the 84 edition.
Yeah.
But the 84 edition, you got to recognize that the four different sequences in the development of the Great Controversy, the thing keeps getting expanded and expanded, and by 1888, when the thing is published again, you got people like Canwright out there, and they're saying she copied. So she said, "Yeah, I did copy."
She's needing to address the criticism, and that's why she put it in the next edition.
It's just like in the New Testament. The authors are always responding to issues and people out there.
By the time that
here, because a lot of this is driving some of your questions. We tend to look at Adventist history and Ellen White with present-mindedness. That we're looking through backwards. So we know all these problems came up, so we impute a lot of stuff. But the only way to really get a faithful grasp at it is to take it from the beginning, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
The other stuff is, it's in the air. It's in the atmosphere. And see how it developed across time in relationship to problems in the issues in the larger world, in the Adventist church, even among specific individuals or conferences or institutions within the Adventist church. And all this put in a framework that she herself saw her major purpose as mission, not being an ideologue. And she never wanted, she said, you must have Bible evidence, Bible evidence for every position you hold. And I got a chapter in this book, Prophets in Conflict, which basically says, and it's on the human nature of Christ. The whole thing has been fought on out of the writings of Ellen White because the Bible doesn't solve it. But when it comes right down to it, it doesn't make any difference.
And I think
not a Bible issue. And if you're using Ellen White's writing, she hasn't given you permission for that.
And I think the only reason people like myself ask these kind of questions of people like yourself is because the only way we can actually grasp the context and the complexity is by talking to people like yourself who have immersed themselves in that world. So I'm hoping you're not thinking that I'm trying to.
No. I'm just saying I understand where you're coming from. I think I want to. I'm not the mind reader, but I've lived in the Adventist world a long time.
Yeah.
And I see the same kinds of questions coming up over and over again. Yeah. And they're always looking back, and they got the 1940s, 50s, 60s DNA, and the stuff permeates Adventism.
And I guess that's why my question is not so much, let's go over these questions again that you've heard a million times, but exploring why many scholars like yourself have portrayed this in very accurate ways, and many people like myself, and I was saying to you earlier, my mother, your book about, you just mentioned it, sorry, the Angry Saints,
yeah.
They revolutionized those writings revolutionized people's lives and took them away from this fear-based and led them to a wonderful freedom. My questions
and altogether easy. When I gave those lectures at the 88 General Conference session, it became the book Angry Saints. Some of the people thought I'd fallen off the wall in my head.
Yeah, and that's my questions are not about the questions that are asked of you and the repetition of such, but the constant rebirth of people taking on the Andreasen approach and taking on the last generation approach and taking on the I must get all my sins forgiven approach. There doesn't seem to be a much headway, like our Ted Wilson GC president, the compliance document. There doesn't seem to be a lot of headway in heading these views off at the pass, so to speak.
Well, you can try, but I once preached a sermon at Avondale called Jesus the Greatest Failure. He didn't make much headway. He went to the cross and not one of his disciples had been converted. They were still arguing about who was the greatest.
And they misunderstood the soon return of Christ as well.
Hey, it's hard to get through, and I don't feel too discouraged because I'm thankful that Jesus was the greatest failure, that he never succeeded with one of them. Now, he did succeed after his death. And, we all succeed perhaps with the Holy Spirit among some people. But, if I was the devil, man, I'd got the soup mixed up as good as I could. I happen to believe there's a devil because I think things are pretty well messed up. All they have to do is I won't talk about American politics. Anyway, the land of the free. If I was the devil, I got a book on that, if I were the devil, what would I do to the church? What would I do to Ellen White? How's the best way that I could make a mess out of her or out of the doctrine of salvation?
My theory is it's quite easy to do with Adventism, because I would probably disagree with you that the DNA of this kind of fear-based nightmares that I woke up in as a child extends further back.
Oh, well, hold on a second now. We got another element in the DNA. Books like Messages to Young People. I got a chapter in here called Making Ellen White Say What She Never Said. It's on compilations. And one of them happens to be Messages to Young People, which has driven a lot of people out of the church. Because she wrote for a period of 70 years. And the way the book was put together, I outline all this in the book. I got the letters, I got all the research. The way it was put together is he went and got all the quotations from the testimonies and all these statements in the review and use instructor, and he put them together. Well, he missed her theology.
Who put it together?
I got the guy's name somewhere in the book.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't publish it because my first theory was, this was a hypothesis, that the guy that compiled it ran off with his secretary soon after it was completed. Right. That was my first hypothesis. I had to test it. which is true. I mean, they did run off with her. But us preachers sometimes preach about our own problems. So the second chapter is massive, right up front. Struggling with sin. Now, the white estate in the 60s wanted to revise it, and they wanted to make it a problem-centered approach. I said, no, the thing needs to be basically tossed out, and you need a Christ-centered approach. If you take, now, over a period of 70 years, you know how many things can go wrong with young people? You know, those isolated statements put into one book becomes toxic. But they were over a period of 70 years, and they faced problems, just like counsels and diets and foods. You can't have all those problems and still be alive. I'm sorry.
And you're preaching to the converted here. Preaching to the choir, I mean. Preaching to the choir.
This is the young people, I believe, to be really, truly faithful to Ellen White. You've got to capture the Jesus who loves young people and the Holy Spirit comes to help young people. It's in that Jesus gave his life to die for all of us, young and old. You've got to get that major theme, which you don't get with quotations. This is the theology of Ellen White.
Yeah.
And in that context, he wants us to overcome sin. He wants us to walk the Christian path, but it needs to have the theological Christ-centered context. When you take that, when you take all those quotations from 70 years to thousands of young people, and you superimpose them on today's young people in one little book, you're gonna have fear.
If you didn't have Ellen White at all and no Adventism, would you still be able to conclude these gems that you're talking about from just the Bible alone and the teachings of Jesus?
What do you mean the gems I'm talking about? I mean, just clarify.
The gems of you're saying that if people truly understood Jesus and understood Ellen's mission to promote Jesus and the Bible, and many young people are not getting this because people are getting things out of context. People are putting compilation books together and cherry picking, and of course it's creating a lot of fear. What I'm saying is, if there was no Adventism, no Ellen White, would people still be able to come to a wonderful understanding of Jesus and the Bible and the teachings of joy that young people can find in him?
I think you can get that out of Scripture. I think that Adventists are on their own. I take Wesleyan and Calvinistic fundamentalists have created the same nightmare that Adventists have without Ellen White.
So why do we need Ellen White and Adventism then?
Well, that's the wrong interpretation of Ellen White. Ellen White had it nice. She said, "You wouldn't need me if you studied your Bible."
Is she saying that people weren't studying their Bible, and we can't study the Bible without her pointing us to the Bible?
Well, that's one of her functions. To me, the only test of a true prophet, she points a true prophet points us to Jesus and points us back to the Word of God. If they don't do that, forget it.
And I guess I'm saying is that if there was no Ellen White, would people still be pointing us to the Bible regardless?
Yeah, but I don't think that God's Holy Spirit operates in any one person at any one time.
And therefore I'm saying, well, what's special and unique about this prophet? What is she bringing to the table that's more unique than others that would point us to the Bible anyway?
It depends on how you look. I'm not going to try to answer your question head on. It depends on how you look at anybody that, how God works. God works in many ways. And the more people, more ways he's got to point us to the Bible, the better.
Okay.
Ellen White never claimed to be the only authority on earth. She wished that, in fact, all through her life, she wished that other people would have taken up a lot of her task.
No,
that didn't mean you can't be forceful once in a while. She had some tough customers to deal with. She was a woman in a man's world. You could deal with old George I. Butler and Uriah. I mean, these guys were tough dudes. Today, Adventist clergy are a bunch of pansies. These days, you went out, you didn't have any income, you didn't have nothing.
Yeah.
Especially the earliest guys. I mean, and everybody knew what Millerites were. They were all laughed at. if you're going to go out, and there was no church, you had to go raise your churches. When you went on to another place, and you were a laughing stock. These people were tough.
No,
and for Ellen White to succeed as a woman,
yeah.
no, no matter what you think about Ellen White,
I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, I mean, she was a woman who could hold her own in a dogfight.
No, I have a lot of respect for that. So let's go to 1860s. The church is formed officially around 1863, I think. They've come to a bit of a consensus on the investigative judgment. What was the investigative judgment as believed by them at that time?
Pretty much the same as it is now officially.
So what is that?
Well, it began in 1844 and would conclude probably with the close of probation.
But what's the investigative part of it? Is it Christ starting a new kind of judgment, judging the living, judging the dead, judging everybody that's accepted Jesus from the beginning of time to now? What does that investigation look like?
Well, all I know is the Bible says that everybody comes into judgment. And there seems to be two phases of investigation and two parts of executive judgment. Because the word investigative judgment has taken on so much bad vibes, I very seldom ever use it. I think pre-Advent judgment is closer to it. I do think the church is wrong. In Daniel 8:14, that's the judgment of the little horn. But Daniel 7 has 3 different repetitions of the pre-Advent judgment. And verse 22 makes it very clear that judgment is for the saints. Judgment all the way through the New Testament, too, is not something to be feared. The saints in Revelation 6 can hardly wait for the judgment. And you find that picture other places. That's where judgment is gospel.
Why does she say that 1 in 20 young people are going to see their Saviour? That seems to be a fairly fear-based kind of judgment that they're going to be put under scrutiny.
Once again, you can take that 1 in 100 and all these things, and you can collect them up and create fear. I think Ellen White was just saying, wake up. You guys don't even know where you're going. I think we tend to read too much into her statements. We exegete them. She was just off the cuff.
Yeah. Tell me about the shut door vision.
I'm going to go back to that off the cuff thing. I don't think she ever expected us to be sitting around writing commentaries on her words.
I sense she was quite frustrated with when people did that. I've read lots of her letters to people, and you don't say Ellen White says this, and you say she says that. Well, she was so frustrated by it.
She says, I'm scared to speak in public and even in private because people take my words and twist them and make them mean just the opposite. And I bring all that stuff out in Prophets in Conflict. She is nothing that we've had to deal since her death that she didn't have to deal with before. And that's one approach that I've taken to interpreting Ellen White, is to see how she interpreted herself. And I think we need to do that with Scripture too. We superimpose theories on Scripture. It must be inductive. What did people say about their own inspiration or relationship to the Holy Spirit? And how did they use other inspired materials? And you'll find out that Adventism, as we know it and have known it, is pretty far from a healthy approach.
But overall, it is still a good vehicle for bringing people to Jesus, you think?
About Adventism?
Yeah.
Well, some Adventists.
So
there's nothing pure in the world, okay?
Oh, yeah, I know.
And I go back. If I were the devil, I'd make sure that Adventism had a thorough mixture of all kinds of nuts. I got a book in my library called "The Nuts Among the Berries." I wish I would have thought of that title myself. It's a history of health reform, and Adventists play a large role. the nuts among the berries. I think of that as I was going to write a book called Becoming. It's going to be part of my Adventist history, brief history, search for identity, organizational history. It's going to be called Becoming Peculiar. And that was going to be a history of our lifestyle. And peculiar has two meanings that I was going to play on. One is strange.
Yeah.
Like weird.
Yeah.
We got a lot of weird Adventists, okay? We got a lot of weird Adventists. But it also means precious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a message there. There's a message there.
Mm.
I used to have a sermon called Why I Don't Like Adventists, and I don't. Now, if they're Christians, that's great. But if they're only Adventists, let me free.
That's a good point.
I am a Christian first.
Mm.
And my Adventism finds meaning within that Christianity.
Mm.
And I think that's the essence of Revelation 14:12. Here's the patience of the saints, those who are waiting for Jesus to come, who have the commandments of God and faith in Jesus. Now, King James Version says faith of Jesus. Faith in Jesus is what it's all about.
Mm.
We have a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. In that context, commandment keeping has meaning. And that's even found in the Ten Commandments. You go back to Exodus 20. What you have first is grace. When you get to the Ten Commandments, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. That's grace. Therefore, honor me. But grace always comes before law, even in the Ten Commandments.
You mentioned earlier Ron Numbers and Walter Ray. Where do you think they got their context wrong?
I think birth.
As in their birth?
They were born Adventists.
Ah, right. You weren't born an Adventist, were you?
No, and I still don't think I can't figure them out. Now, I've been in this business for 70 years, but Adventists don't make logic to me. When I decided to leave the church, I decided to leave Christianity, not this little sideshow called Adventism.
It intrigues me that you came back as an adult.
Yeah, why not? I believed in Scripture.
Yeah.
What I needed to do was get my brain cleared out. And I did that by studying philosophy, which I found has no answers, ultimate answers. My conversion actually started with the problem of sin. It was the 1960s, early 70s. I was a revolutionary. I was ready. I was a Marxist without the Soviet overtones. And I was ready to start the revolution. I'm sitting there one day and I said, man, this all sounds so good. You put in what you can and take out what you need. And I said, how come it's never worked? I said, people take out everything they can and put in as little as possible. And then at that point, I predicted the fall of the Soviet Union. But I said, why don't these utopian schemes work? Because people are twisted up, self-centered, selfish, messed up.
Amen.
That is the core of what it's all about. Sin is no action. Sin is love. It's loving yourself more than God and more than your neighbor. It's agape. That's sin.
So why seek ultimate answers?
Sins, actions.
Why seek ultimate answers? If quite possibly there are none, and we need to just live virtuous, value, moral lives because we care about each other's well-being as much as possible.
Well, lots of people do. It's called humanism. I personally believe that a God who created a complex earth, I never had enough faith to be an atheist. I was an agnostic. It takes tremendous faith to be an atheist.
Although the true definition of atheism is not that they don't believe. They're just saying, you haven't given me enough evidence for me to conclude convincingly that there is a God.
I think you're into agnosticism now.
No, an agnostic is someone that is actually saying, look, I'm going to keep exploring the evidence to convince me one way or the other. An atheist is saying, well, when you show it to me and it's conclusive and convinces me, well, then I'll take on board your path. But until then, I'm not going to be searching. So the difference
That's
is,
not what the word means.
an agnostic is someone that is seeking knowledge and open to that knowledge revealing ideas. An atheist is saying, look, I'm not even going to seek that knowledge of if there's a unicorn or not.
Both of them start with the letter A,
Yeah.
which is a negative.
Yeah.
Atheist, no God. Agnosis, no knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, one says no God, the other one says we don't have enough knowledge. That's the basic meaning of the two words.
But both are saying, convince me. And if you convince me, I'll believe it. They're not saying, I don't believe it already.
I'm not saying, I don't think most atheists are saying, convince me. I just think that, you're wacko.
Well, you're saying they need faith. And I'm just saying that maybe that's not an accurate interpretation.
I'm going to tell you this. This is one of the things that drove me out of philosophy, back to religion. Oh, anyway, I get back to the problem of sin was the first step back for me. And the problem is so deep that humans can never save themselves. I happen to believe that a God who created a complex universe, I don't see any, you can take intelligent design if you don't want a God, but you've still got to have a designer. It becomes reasonable, at least, if you got a complex universe, that God or whoever the creator was might communicate. That's revelation.
Is that the cosmological view?
Well, there are several different views that are related to that. But anyway, yeah, I think revelation is absolutely crucial for Christianity. For being a humanist, fine. Humanism, to me, is bankrupt, because I'm quite convinced through the study of history and looking at the news and looking at how political systems work and churches work and everything else, that everything is messed up and that humanism is bankrupt.
Are they more bankrupt, though, than the natural Adventist nuts that you're talking about as well?
Well, I'm going to tell you what.
That implies that we're all humans and we're all bankrupt.
Yeah, I think that's part of what sin is all about. And I think you keep referring to the judgment. Jesus talked about the judgment wonderfully well in one place. Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46, the sheep and the goats. When I preach on that text, I have people count the question marks. Everybody's surprised.
Yeah.
Us Adventists think that you're going to get saved by what you believe. You got the 28 fundamental beliefs, or 27, or 920. I don't care. If you got lifestyle, no. All the people that are lost in Matthew 25 happen to have good theology and good lifestyle. It's the people that are messed up who happen to get saved by grace, and because they cared about other people. Interesting enough, Desire of Ages 637, reflecting on that, says Jesus says the judgment turns upon one point. Whether you really care about your neighbor. If you've got the love of God in your heart, and the love of God is the law. Interesting enough, you can get that in the scripture.
That's what I was going to say.
But Ellen White makes it very explicit. She's not a good Adventist. She really makes it explicit when she says in more than one place, the principles of the law are eternal, but after sin, God made them more explicit. Yeah, the two great commandments, the principle of the law, that's eternal. The 10 commandments, you don't have to tell the angels, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." I'm not even sure they were wired for the project. It couldn't have, the Sabbath is created, for the creation of this earth. It's post-fall stuff.
Sabbath's for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Yeah, and I always like to tell people, in fact, I preached a series of sermons at the General Conference Annual Council 92, came out of the book, I Used to Be Perfect, that Adventists don't understand the law.
But for me personally,
not the law.
For me personally, I I am not questioning. My view on the judgment is very different to the Adventist view on judgment. I'm just concerned as an observer that Adventists keep coming back and getting tripped up on the judgment, and that's why the topic for Adventists is important to discuss and unpack, because they keep getting tripped up on it, and they keep getting tripped on it because, like you say, no matter how much information to the contrary they're given, we, you, I, we're all human, so we're going to get tripped up on it anyway. And if there is a devil, that's his main goal, is to trip us up. So I guess I think the discussion of the judgment and the Adventist view of it is important, because this knowledge and discussion is important to keep unfolding and to keep presenting to people. It's an ongoing thing. Once you and I are dead and gone, hopefully people continue to talk about the judgment and the context and the correct understanding of the judgment as per related to the Bible.
I would hope so, but what you just referred to, of this constant struggle to present things correctly, is what I call spiritual gravity. And it's always pulling us down. And reform must always work against spiritual gravity.
Yes.
Hopefully in an informed way. But there's another factor that comes in here, and that is Adventists like new truth. We like strange stuff. We like weird stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, some of our evangelism brings that stuff in, but we do a whole lot. People come to me and I say, look, why don't you read the 4 Gospels?
Yeah.
And when you finish with that, read Romans, read Acts. If you don't read anything but the 4 Gospels the rest of your life, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Amen.
In terms of salvation. But Adventists want weird stuff. and I'm going to reflect on this again in Scripture. Jesus tried to get real healthy people, what looked like healthy people, to come in, but they were just self-deceived, but they thought they were healthy. That's the other branch of Adventism. But he said they had to go out to the highways and byways and gather in the weirdos.
So they did.
Because they felt a need. Jesus had a sympathy for weirdos.
One of the interesting things about leadership in Adventism is they seem to get lobbied from both sides, and invariably they seem to fall on the side of supporting those that have these peculiar views. Why is that?
I wouldn't always agree with that. I would say too often it is.
Yeah.
At least here in the States, we've seen pretty revolutionary folks. Dan Jackson just retired as NAD president.
I loved his hooey. I loved his hooey comment.
He was a human being, and I have found support. Even though I'm a little outspoken, you wouldn't know that, would you? I hate controversy. I really do, especially religious controversy. I just write my stuff down. If people want to read it, fine. If they don't want to read it, hey,
good on you.
I wrote down what I think.
Yeah,
and I've researched on. But I have been. I've not always said nice things about. Let me just give you an illustration. Year 2000 General Conference, Toronto. The week before the session started, I got a call from a vice president. He said, "We're inviting you to make a presentation, and we want you to keep the people awake. We're putting you first because if we can't keep the people awake, they won't come back the next day. We got this slot. You're going to be the first." And so I didn't know what to say, but I went for a walk, and into my head comes this concept: if I were the devil, what would I do to the church? I've been playing that game in class all the time, so it just fit nicely. And I was a little worried about some of the stuff I wrote because it's not traditional Adventism. And I went up to see the vice president that made the assignment, and I said, "Phil, you might want to read this thing before you let me loose on the platform." And he said, "I'm not going to read it." But he did say this: "Those of us in the presidential circle do not like what you say, but we know you're right."
Wow. Who said that?
I have survived in spite of it all.
Who
And
said that to you, by the way?
What's that?
Who said that to you?
He said that to me.
Who was it?
Phil, can't remember Phil's last name right now. My short-term memory is fading on me. Phil Follett, Vice
Right.
President of the General Conference, passed
Wow.
away now.
Wow.
But that's a pretty revealing type of statement. But that's the kind of statements, feedback that I've been getting a long time. And I've been pretty confrontational. I remember in the 88 meetings in Nairobi, right in front of me was Neil Wilson. And as I was studying for the meetings, I studied for George I. Butler. The first biographies on him called Rugged Heart. He was a tough customer. And the more I studied it, the more I said to myself, wow, this guy sounds like Neil. And so I worked over Butler really good. Really laid him out right before the whole. Now, I didn't use one quotation where Ellen White says, Brother Butler's been in office three years too long and thinks his word is infallible. That would have brought the house down. It's in the book, but I didn't use it.
Yeah.
But I pounded away at Brother Butler, and I'm standing in the lunch line. The General Conference president comes up to me. If you've ever seen Neil's eyes, you know they're penetrating. Put his hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eye, and said, I want you to quit talking about me. But he smiled.
Yeah.
Smiled. I've discovered you can't take yourself too seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't live in a world of fear. You say what you think, but three things I think people want to see. In my own self, they know that I understand Adventist history, that I believe in the Bible. I believe in Ellen White for the purpose which she was given. And I'm a faithful Adventist, a Christian Adventist.
Maybe that's a different thing.
And I think that when my generation, that is my sub-generation, came along, after Numbers and Ray, they were ready for a moderate voice because they knew the problems were out there. But do we have somebody or a group of somebodies who can handle it in a constructive way?
Yeah, I think the time was right for someone like yourself to come in that had the knowledge, was an Adventist, believed in the Bible, but was able to put things in a way that kind of was a bit apologetic for Adventism and Ellen White's place within Adventism. And I think that's why you've been able to write so many books, because they're obviously being well received amongst the Adventists.
I've had tremendous support from the publishing administrations. The current administration is under the North American Division. That's how come some of my stuff comes out. They came within a hair's breadth of publishing this book, Adventist Authority Wars, Ordination, and the Roman Catholic Temptation. That's before I found out my books were banned in Michigan, and I phoned up the president and I said, I've been politicized too much. You need to speak to the whole church. I'm going to get this published elsewhere. And he came to the same conclusion about the same time. But we dickered on that for about 3 months. We're dealing with publishing house people and North American Division administration that would like to get the truth out there in balanced form, knowing that if we don't do it, we're going to have to relive the 1980s and 1970s all over again.
Yeah, I think we're headed for Glacier View number 2, Mark II, very soon.
Well, I don't know. Glacier View was a unique experience. I'm not sure that the church could ever be brought to that crisis again.
Yeah, not based on the same kind of theme, but I think based on the compliance document and the power it's going to bring to division, to divide.
Yeah, well, I told Dale, the president of Pacific Press, yesterday, we did a Zoom. Well, we went to do a Zoom. I couldn't make connection. This one here's the Roman Catholic Temptation. In my new book, I said I mistitled it. I meant to put in there, and I should have, and he says, let's do it in the next printing, Prophets in Conflict, the Mormon Temptation. This one's ecclesiastical temptation, which some of our people have fallen for. this one here is authority in terms of revelation. And guess what? We managed to mess up on both of them, as well as a few other places.
A few other things. Just take me back again to the 1860s, when there was a consensus view of the sanctuary. What was the belief of the sanctuary back then? We're not going to dig into the investigative judgment. What was the sanctuary belief in the 60s?
Don't think things changed.
So what was it then?
Apartment sanctuary. Probably a little more mechanical than I would express it. I don't think that either Hebrews or Ellen White in early writings it has a mechanical approach. They have a functional approach. Paul says, when Paul gets the furniture mixed up in what is it, Hebrews 9, he said, who cares about that stuff? Let's get on to the real stuff. And Ellen White's got, she's got Jesus. She's got stuff in the sanctuary in early writings that doesn't even exist there. She wasn't concerned as much as people like Andreas and that generation of getting down to, I got a book somewhere called The Throne of God, and every little nut and bolt. It's got a chapter on every nut and bolt, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we did to it. We made a monster out of it. And the time you stretched it out too far, you can't make sense of it anymore, because you're dealing with spiritual truths. When you try to over mechanicalize it, you get in trouble. I remember it. I was teaching at Avondale back in the 80s, and I gave a lecture on the belch theory of inspiration. It was my most popular lecture.
Yeah.
That is that if every time Ellen White belched, it had to be inspired.
Yeah.
You can imagine what I did with that topic.
Have you got them on? Have they been recorded?
We like making everything mechanical, black and white, clear, when we're dealing with dynamic spiritual realities, which have a whole lot of dynamic context.
So say I come to you and I know nothing about the sanctuary, but I do know that it's one of the pillars of the Adventist Church. Explain it to me. What is the sanctuary? What's the sanctuary doctrine that is one of these pillars?
Well, the sanctuary doctrine traditionally has been, in essence, that the pre-Advent judgment began at the Great Disappointment, when Jesus moved from the first apartment to the second apartment. I think that as an illustration, yeah, but as a reality, come on. That's not even the way Ellen White talks about it in some places. You think Jesus was sitting in one room and God was sitting in another room? And what do these rooms look like?
And the Bible teaches that Christ went straight to the holy place, the most holy.
We're looking at an object lesson, a visual parable. Parables do not walk on all fours, okay? We don't take Luke 16 on the rich man and Lazarus and try to milk it out for every weird detail, okay? But yet we want to take the sanctuary and we want to milk it out. We don't see it as a object lesson of two functions of Christ's heavenly ministry. When you start thinking about the throne room of God, well, I'd like to know what it looks like. I mean, Daniel tells us that there's a few billion angels zipping around up there. I don't think it's that little box. Okay, we're looking at a visual parable that teaches certain lessons. That Jesus has a ministry of intercession, and that Jesus has a ministry of judgment, and that's plain in Scripture. Those are not problematic. Where it becomes problematic for many people is we've tied it to the sanctuary, and then wanted to take the visual illustration of the sanctuary and make it mechanical to the place that the book of Hebrews will not take it, does not take it. When Paul gets the furniture mixed up and then says, let's get on with the real stuff. And then when White puts stuff in there that's not there, you know that they're not being overly mechanical.
So what actually happened in heaven, literally, not metaphorically, on October 22, 1844?
I don't really care.
But if I'm a new Adventist and you're telling me about the sanctuary and what happened in 1844, don't I need to know what the church stands on that? And if you're representing the church and I'm saying, what do you believe? What would your answer be?
I believe that before Jesus comes back, judgment will have taken place. But it's only the first phase of a four-phase judgment. We talk, you want me to be specific. So we talk about the books were open. You really think they got books up there?
Oh, no, I'm not being specific with metaphors.
No, but I want to be specific because this is where Adventists take it.
Yeah.
I can remember we used to argue about whether angels had 2 wings, 4 wings, or 6 wings. I imagine they're jet propelled, but jet propelled is probably too mild a term for it.
Mm.
Books, they didn't have books. They had scrolls. And nowadays, if the Bible was written and the computer was opened, well, the supercomputer was opened. Well, something that we don't even understand was opened because God's technology is so far beyond us, and it can be done in 1 second.
So why is it 176 years later then?
The judgment, don't ask me. The book is on the back. End time events in the last generation. Adventism has only one serious problem: time. Time that never stops, time that moves on and on. All other challenges faced by the denomination flow out of continuing time. That's the kind of question I'll answer for you when I get to the kingdom and we're looking back, and I'll say, man, you know something, Peter? I know the answer to your question now. And Adventists have been concerned with time.
Well, our human understanding of time obviously is flawed. Our understanding of time, that our lifetime ends, can be seen as the end of time. But Ellen White, I'm supposing, was given in vision a clear indication that that time was imminent, as in within her lifetime she believed. Where is she getting that wrong?
Well, all I know is that James and her weren't going to get married because early Adventists didn't marry. They didn't send their kids to school. Jesus was going to come. They wouldn't grow up. James said in 1845 that marriage is a wile of the devil. But you know what? They discovered that Jesus wasn't coming right away.
That's right.
And then pretty soon, when they're going to have educational system, the accusation was, well, these kids are never going to grow up. It's not a waste of money.
But is that a discovery that her vision was wrong? Because her vision clearly stated it was happening very soon. Get ready, Jesus is coming any day. Only those who accepted the Millerite view. The door has been shut.
Why we focus
as you grow and expand your understanding, why can't she say, look, I was actually wrong, but she tried to tweak the vision?
Well, let me just say this. You are a perfect Adventist. You're raised in an Adventist community, and you look at things like an Adventist. And I always say to people, why in the world don't you go to the Bible? Behold, I come quickly. That's the last, the soon coming of Christ, but whatever I say is a biblical problem.
But when I do that, if I'm viewing it from an incorrect perspective, I go beyond that and I go, well, maybe the Bible was wrong in that. The interpretation that they had was incorrect because it didn't happen quickly. They thought it was happening in his time, so I'd be willing to say the apostles got it wrong. My thoughts are not of how I'm approaching it, but how others see Ellen White as having a vision from God, and then she has an understanding, actually, we were a bit wrong with that. How do we determine and justify and answer that vision was wrong?
I'm not interested in that kind of stuff.
Lots of people are.
I know. That's their problem, not mine.
But they're interested in your point of view.
Okay, my point of view? Ellen White had a growing understanding, and she was frustrated until the time she died because she really wanted it to happen. And that's probably, it's hard to prove with the disciples or the apostles, but I got a sneaking suspicion they expected things to happen real quick.
Oh, yeah, they did.
and you know what? If I was God, I wouldn't have said to you, look at Peter, Peter the apostle right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back on December 31st on 2050. You think anybody would have got off their butt? You're going to preach this to the whole world. They're not going to come back for 2,000 years. I'm going to wait until about a week before, and that's the same thing we've still got today. God always leaves us in tension. And that's what you find in Matthew 24 and 25, that Jesus says, yeah, it's quickly, but it's going to be a long time, and people are going to go to sleep, and you've got this tension.
Mm.
And a theology without tension is not biblical.
But if I'm making a prophetic claim that I'm saying I've been shown by God, and people are therefore going, whoa, hang on, let's listen to this person, no matter what context you put it into, if that claim turns out to be wrong, it's either that I've misinterpreted the vision, or I didn't have the vision, or I have to understand why did God give me an incorrect view of what actually was happening.
And that is probably beyond us, but I do think that we need to take into consideration, we need not to become dispensationalists here with a rigid view of inspiration that's not conditional. Jonah preached that everybody was going to get fried, and he got mad at God because God didn't fry him.
Yeah.
And Ellen White basically said that all of God's promises and threatenings are like conditional.
But the authority given to her by people around her at the time was greatly enhanced because of claims of her visions. So therefore her authority carried an enormous amount of weight during her lifetime. So it only goes to, it only follows that if people are seeing this as, well, she was human and in context and she misinterpreted things, now we can see a lessening of that authority. But back then, she wielded enormous power because she claimed these visions were from God.
I think that she really did believe that Christ was going to come. Whether that was hindered by some reason or just the obtuseness of Adventists, or, let's face it. I can still remember meeting with the General Conference officers and telling them we had 3 million members at the time. Maybe it was 6, I don't care. 6 million members is not a sign of our success, it's a sign of our failure. 22 million members is not a sign of our success, it's a sign of our failure. We're still here on earth. And the issues related to time, I'm not sure we're ever going to iron out on this earth. I'm not sure that's our job. If you follow Matthew 24 and 25, it leads to faithful living. Using our talents, and particularly using them, if you follow the parables, through staying awake, using our talents, developing our talents, and really caring about other people. Adventists have been focused on time. Christ was focused on what kind of people are we going to be, so that any day that he comes, we're ready.
But the focus on time is actually in the name Seventh-day Adventist. So it's not just a...
you mean the Adventist aspect?
Seventh-day Adventists believe very clearly in a soon return of Christ. It's almost the number one reason that they want to keep talking about it. So to hear someone say, well, let's go back to what Christ was talking about, which wasn't about time. Let's live our lives now. If even his apostles got it wrong, how can we get behind a church that makes that almost their number one claim?
It will happen someday, and it's going to catch most of us by surprise.
Would you suggest, though, that by saying by surprise that it's almost a close claim to soon and imminent, and that's close to date setting?
I'll tell you one thing. If we're going to come by surprise, there's only one day that I do not think it will happen, and that's today. But somewhere down the track, things will change. And I think Adventists are going to be the most caught by surprise, because God can do things different. I once wrote an article where I compared Adventism to Soviet communism, one having failed and the other in the process. and I showed an alternate eschatology, the right in Scripture. And I thought, I didn't want to publish it. It was published in ministry. I gave it as a lecture at a college. And I said, no. It was David Newman at the time, the editor. I said, look, that'll be the end of my career. You can't publish that thing. Adventists aren't ready for an alternate eschatology. The only thing I got attacked on was I said, people are going to be surprised when they get to heaven and find out that God's a socialist. Oh, man, I got whacked all over the place for that. What, you're going to be a capitalist? Take advantage of your neighbor, and that's the end product of social Darwinism, economically. But anyway, I have no doubt that God has always kept before people that this is going to happen pretty quick. I don't know what that means. I find the wording all the way through both Ellen White and Scripture.
To almost motivate us to live a better life.
Or, well, if you've got better life as a loving life, rather than being an extreme vegan, Or as I like to say, I've known some Sabbath keepers who are meaning the devil. Even met a vegan one time who was meaning the devil. No, quality of life must be taken in the same sense that the Bible teaches it, and the same sense in which they say Christ object lessons on perfecting the nature of Christ. That context takes it. Yeah, that's what Christian living is all about.
Someone has just written in the comments that my questions are not revealing a nuanced understanding of this topic, and I'm trying to ask questions on behalf of the non-nuanced person.
Yeah, and I'm a little restricted on time.
We're going to...
And I'm going to have to sign off within about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I do appreciate your time, and I was just throwing that in there to confirm that my view is very nuanced, but I'm asking on behalf of a lot of people that...
Well, no, you sound just... Yeah,
not so nuanced.
I believe, Peter, that you're correct. You're asking from the way that many Adventists, let's say in the Avondale community or other Adventists, would ask the questions. And I'm coming from a totally different position, saying you guys are asking the wrong questions. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. And I guess I'm asking the questions so that you have an opportunity to say, what should they be asking?
Yeah, that's what I've been writing about all these years.
And I then was going to say what we can do to that is just direct people towards your books.
Well, I got a group in Johannesburg, South Africa. They want me to talk about last generation theology on a Zoom. I'm going to say, read my books. I've said everything I want to say. But I really appreciate what you've done, because you are asking it. You don't look like a traditional Adventist, okay?
No, I've actually left the church.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay, but you've done a pretty good job on remembering what it was like.
Oh, yeah. I only left 4 years ago.
Okay. If that's the kind of stuff I got to deal with, I'm not interested. In other words, I can think of a lot of good reasons to leave the Adventist church. And a lot of it's the mentality that you're raising. When I studied philosophy, I discovered that philosophy is not so much answering questions, is asking the right questions. And this is where I guess I don't fit into the Adventist mold.
Yeah.
I've got a brain that came from the outside.
That's why I've loved chatting with you.
It's not in my DNA to ask these questions. Now, I went through a phase when I could ask them better than you could. In other words, that was a real dyed-in-the-wool Adventist. Didn't take me long because it's easy for me to go. I'm very intense. But you've done a good job, and I want to commend you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Because there's a lot of tension behind what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess the people that watch and listen to the podcast are from all walks of Adventism. Even though the people doing the interviews are more liberal and progressive, the people watching, there's a good 50-50 split in the audience.
I can imagine. I can imagine. But I don't think we ought to let this point pass, that you have been very faithful to the traditional Adventist concerns.
Oh, yeah.
Ellen White, investigative judgment, these issues, time, and I guess I can no longer live in that environment, but I can still live in the church because I ask different questions and I try to teach the church that we need to ask different questions.
Well, the irony is that I longed for the nuanced church. None of the questions I am asking am I really seeking personal answers for anymore, but I long to see a church not headed towards, 30, 40-year crisis moments. And I guess I'm trying to bring some kind of discussion to play that helps to bring an end to that loop.
And I appreciate that. Unfortunately, what I believe is the biblical doctrine of total depravity, meaning we're as bad as we could be, but that every part of the human nature is messed up. I think church history is not cyclical, but it has similar patterns across time. And those who don't understand their history are going to relive it. And most people do not understand, let's say, Adventist history, let alone other historical things. And just like, we've seen a tremendous move by people who really aren't too politically smart, who rise around the world as the new right. I don't think they studied the 1930s and 40s very well.
No. It's the frustrating thing that history just keeps on repeating.
And the frightening thing is so many people vote for these people.
I know.
That's scary.
I know.
Yeah. And that's one reason I believe in eschatology, that human beings have not proven they can get out of their own doo-doo.
Yeah.
That's the history of the world. And it's not only back there, it's in your Australian news, it's in the American news, it's everywhere. It's in the textbooks. It's just there. We live in a sick world.
Yeah. Well, look.
Is that an encouragement word for Adventists as a church? I think it's an encouragement word for people.
Yes.
For individuals.
I love that.
Adventism has not escaped the dynamics of the larger culture. We are a subset of the larger culture, and we're just messed up. And there's a difference between church members and Christians. And
in my own, particularly, I really enjoy watching YouTube and listening to podcasts, and particularly interviews that you've done. I've enjoyed reading between the lines where your message is not just to Adventists; it is speaking to humans. And I'm just going to jump in there for a moment. What a conversation. I hope you're enjoying it. But I just wanted to remind everybody that today's program is sponsored by Angela S. Lima. And if it wasn't for folk like Angela and many of you supporting the content and sending through some donations, we literally wouldn't exist. I got a massive Restream. That's the platform I use here. Bill yesterday for over $700 Australian. And so, yeah, if you're enjoying the content, that would be fantastic if you could support the channel. And you can just go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. But Angela Lima, thank you so much for sponsoring today's program. And what an incredible ride it is. And we're at that point now where I think I mentioned once George was kind of realizing where I was coming from, you can tell in his voice he's softening a bit. And when he realized I'm not an Adventist anymore, that also helped to shift some of his view there. But there seems to also be quite a strong desire to say there's nothing to see here, which seems in the light of 5 years later, the light of Reclaiming the Prophet, which he was very much involved with, being cancelled and unavailable. is quite interesting. And just little things like where early on in the conversation he was saying that, Des Ford was trying to claim that, Ellen was responsible for these teachings, the pillars, the sanctuary, etc., and that in fact she wasn't. Well, I find that a little bit unusual to piece together. Des was really confirming that Ellen White's support in vision of these pillars is what created the structure of the church that believed the Millerite dates, the 2,300 days, etc. And he was pointing out that they don't add up, and gave many, many very well qualified answers to confirm that. So again, it's a little bit of the progressive Adventists, the historians, the academics, the philosophers, the scholars, the pastors, being a little bit selective in their criticism of Des, whereas the reality was that Ellen White confirmed these pillars in vision. If she hadn't confirmed that God had told her, they wouldn't be considered as such a important part of DNA, of the Adventist DNA. And so, yeah, hopefully you're picking up on all of those kind of anomalies that I've just been watching again as well and being reminded of. Thank you again for Angela Lima sponsoring today. And let's get back into the last 15 minutes of this incredible program. Get your history right, get your context right. Don't uplift people onto pedestals. I think what you're saying is can have wonderful benefit and inspiration to all humans.
And I think this, and you've got an Adventist background. I'm dealing with people in all kinds of religious backgrounds. Fundamentalism in Adventism is no different than fundamentalism in Calvinism or Wesleyanism. They made all the same stupid rules and came up with much of the same final generation theology, not specifically the way the Adventists did, but man, you talk to them, they're just as frustrated as we are.
Yeah, exactly.
And when it comes to fundamentalism, you can have it in Islamic, you can have it, in the far right in culture.
Yeah.
No. We are a subset. This is the problem. Whether we're liberal or conservative in Adventism, we are a subset of those larger liberal and conservative worlds.
Oh, and again, that's why I just want to highlight, when I listen to your material, my ears prick up and I go, this is not your normal Adventist apologist here. And I enjoy extrapolating what you've said to find meaning in all denominations, all human history. I think the gems of what you reveal are applicable to more than just Adventist understanding and exegesis and eschatology.
The best thing that happened to me, not for everybody, but for me, is that I did my doctoral work in a field that had absolutely nothing to do with Christianity, except historically. And it led me, and of course I came from a secular background in the first place, but it led me to look at things from a different direction. And because I've really studied widely in a variety of fields, not just philosophy, but sociology and psychology and many anthropology and political science, you bring all these things together and you get a new perspective and fresh insight. There's a place with a theologian that specializes in the word Kai in John 3:16 and writes 18 books upon it of 1,000 pages each. That's not the kind of a scholar I am. A person that's looking at the big picture, and saying, "Hey, what are the real issues here? Where has the world gone wrong? Where have we gone wrong?" Because we are a subset. Now, some people think that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is God's church. No. I would say remnant message is better than remnant church. I find remnant message to be biblical. We have a message for the larger church and world. It's a special message, Revelation 14. I wish there was 100 denominations preaching that message. If there was, maybe I'd belong to one of them. But right now I know of only one, and I happen to see it make sense within the galactic problem, which, as you already know, for me, well, I think the galactic problem altogether is the problem that people are messed up. Call it sin if you want. Even psychiatrists have did away with the problem of sin early in the 20th century. One of the greatest, Menninger, wrote a book called Whatever Happened to Sin? Can people really be evil? Or do they just make mistakes?
Yeah.
Well, we can't explain everything away outside of the fact that people are basically selfish and are going to use people if they can.
Yeah.
Do the unloving thing.
Yeah.
Talk about DNA. I mean, that's pretty universal. I think Adventism needs a realistic view of itself in the world and in the Church Universal as to where we belong. And most Adventists would hate me to say that we're really a branch of the Roman Catholic Church. There's only two branches of the church, the Eastern branch and the Western branch. Western branch, for a long time, was only Roman Catholic. Then it faced a reformation of many varieties, and we're all confused on that. You already told me, say we're not Calvin. We act as if we get our theology from Calvin or Luther. Come on, that's no. We're way more radical. Our founders were more radical. Today we're just Adventist in the U.S. and probably I think Australia. We're just nice evangelicals.
Yeah,
pretty harmless.
Yeah.
Except to each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to congratulate you.
Oh, thank you, George.
On asking me all these Adventist questions, and I didn't really want to answer them because I'm not into those issues. But I know that there's a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
But now I finally come to the place where I can really say, I think these are the wrong questions. Now, it's not that they shouldn't have any answer at all, but I don't think they're the essential questions. And essential is crucial in moving forward. What is Christianity all about? What is Adventism all about? Why is this problem with Ellen White when it's still in the Bible? And I tell people, Ellen White got this really strong statement on sinlessness. I said, man, have you ever read 1 John, the 3rd chapter? Whew, man, it drives home sinlessness and statements that make Ellen White pale.
Yeah.
That's because they only got one definition of sin. Sin is a transgression of law. Come on. It's not even in Scripture.
Someone has commented that they're, and it kind of exemplifies what we're talking about, that am I being literal about the DNA of Adventism? We're being metaphorical about the DNA, just for those that are turning this conversation into a literal one as well.
Well, I imagine that people can have a real field day between what I said and what you said.
Yeah. Oh, and I say bring it on, because I'm more about the discussion and the stimulating discussions that go on from that, and using a new platform where I think, unlike any other platform, people are able to interact. They can write in the comments. We've had nearly 300 people watching live today. It's a new kind of platform that is unlike the pre-recorded kind of YouTube clips.
It's a needed platform.
Yeah, it's a new kind of thing.
Particularly in our day, we've got nothing to fear from the truth. However, I would say one thing: any discussion must have some kind of a foundation, metaphysically, that is a sense of reality, a sense of truth, epistemologically, axiologically, a sense of values. If it's just spinning our wheels with no common sense of reality or truth,
I,
That's probably not going to go anywhere.
no, and I think what's good for my viewers to realize is that I kind of view myself as a street epistemologist, where I'm interested in asking people questions, not to find the answers, but to find out why they believe what they believe.
Okay, now I understand you a little bit better. You see, that's
Yeah.
good.
I should have said that at the start. Maybe from now on I will.
Like a little bit of honesty at the end of the program. So I actually began to sense that.
I wasn't in any way trying to mislead you. I'm only commenting on people that are commenting in the comments, going, "Hang on, are they not quite getting where I'm coming from?" Because I think you know where I'm coming from.
Well, I think you and I are coming from the same position.
I think we are.
We've
Yeah.
done different things with it,
Mm.
but we both see that the old questions aren't going anywhere.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. I agree.
My writings, by and large, have been a search for my own identity,
Yes.
as well as what it means. I want to know what it means to be a person. I want to know what it means to be a Christian. I want to know what it means to be an Adventist. And I want to know what it means to be a citizen of my nation and of my world.
Yes.
And they're not unrelated.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the big questions and the big issues, rather than in the little itty pitty stuff that gets us, that only an Adventist would ask. I told you about Woodrow Wilson. We were meeting with the 1888 group one time, and they were raising issues that nobody else in the history of the universe has ever raised. And Woody walked out and he looked at me and he said, "You know, if a non-Adventist came in here, we'd think that we were all insane."
That is so true. Yeah.
What are the meaningful questions, huh? Okay, I think I better sign off.
Hey, look, I really appreciate this conversation. It's one that I feel like I would enjoy with you over a cup of Milo or whatever you guys call it, a milkshake.
This is a funny thing. My wife raised Adventist. She drinks coffee. I was raised non-Adventist. I hate the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, over a cup of something hot and delightful, I think.
That's right. That's right.
Imagine us having a deep and philosophical conversation outside the parameters of what we've even talked about today, and I'd really enjoy that.
I think there's hope for you, brother. I hope you think there's hope for me.
I do, and I really, really value the time. Thank you so much. It's been
okay, and I want to say hello to your mother.
Yes. Look, she'll be watching.
Both my friends out there, both in Australia and the U.S. and other parts of the world. That's the blessing of modern technology.
Yeah, and look, I encourage all the viewers, go and buy several copies of a variety of George's books, because they are fascinating. You can't put them down, and they are a really good read. Where would you suggest people start if they hadn't actually discovered you already?
Now, you really expect me to answer that question, don't you?
One book.
Well, it all depends on
give us 5 books that people should start with.
You want something short and sweet? Try I Used to Be Perfect.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I think they're all. I love them all. I mean, that's my problem. It's like
they're like your children.
Yeah, which one is your favorite? Yeah, I like this one because he does this. I like this one because it's got that characteristic. This one acts like me. I love that one because he acts like my mother.
Yeah. What's assuming that people want to get to know your family? Who's the best family member in book form that they should be introduced to first, that then unfolds into all the rest?
Oh, you know what I'd say. What's their contextual issues? I can't move away from it. Some people are going to be interested in soteriology, salvation.
Yeah.
Other people are going to be interested in Ellen White.
Yeah.
I could say, okay, this is a good one on Ellen White. I've written a whole lot of all these topics. Some people are going to be interested in just church history, or organizational issues, or issues related to women's ordination. Everybody's got their own little thing.
I remember going into a bookstore and I was going to choose one of your books, and I didn't read the back to decide. I read the titles, and I thought, which one resonates with me the most? Because all your titles are quite funny and quite positively provocative, you know. And so
Well,
I chose a few books based on just the title.
first thing an author must do is get somebody to pick the book up. That's where the title comes.
That's right. Yes.
And then when they get to the first paragraph, they better get to the place where they want to read the second. Let me just read the
Yes.
first sentence in my introduction.
Now, which book's this one? Which book's this one? Oh, yeah. Yep.
First sentence. Somebody had squealed on me. It all began years ago when I read a communique from the General Conference president in which he noted that there were important Adventist teachings that could only be understood through the aid of Ellen White's writings. Somewhat disturbed, I walked from my office to my seminary class and blurted out that the denomination's leader was sounding more like a Mormon every day.
Yeah, see, I want to buy this book now.
That's what I say. You got to get them hooked. You got to get them to pick up the book.
Yeah.
And then you got the next sentence. The next morning, my secretary told me that I had a call from the General Conference headquarters and needed to contact them as soon as possible. The report of my statement had traveled fast, all too fast. The good news was that the request had been from the editor of the Adventist Review rather than the presidential office, and they wanted me to write a book on Mormonism, but leave names out. but
I love it.
So I'm really, everything must be contextualized. What's important for you, Peter, might not be important for Brother X or Sister Y.
Yeah.
Okay? What's important to the denomination, we talked about Dale Galusha and myself, president of Pacific Press. He said, well, man, now you're really beginning to bear down on stuff that really makes where we are now. I said, yes. But if you take a look at the context, back in 1985, when I published Myths in Adventism, that's where the church was. It's tame now.
Yeah, that was big.
And then when I got to the early 90s and I started writing about salvation, the Pharisees' Guide to Perfect Holiness and all this kind of stuff, people were interested in sociology. As I moved a little later on, we're interested in Millerism because it's the sesquicentennial in 1994, and then on to organization at the turn of the century, and on to authority wars and ordination and the Roman Catholic temptation when that becomes a crucial issue. I've always tried to bring Adventist history and biblical principles into the discussion of what's all today.
And that's interesting because you bring it into the discussion of what's happening right now by contextualizing where it was back then.
That's right.
It's an interesting...
That's how I could get away with working Butler over and Neil saying, quit talking about me.
Yeah.
And we both smiled. I've got a book on my shelf called The Virginian. I got to get out of here. It's a history. It's just a fictional story of the West. But on the back it says, "Smile when you call me that."
Yeah.
I can call you a dirty name, and if you know I'm your friend.
Yeah.
And I'm smiling from ear to ear. But if I got another look on my face, man, then the guns come out blazing, right?
Exactly. You can get away with a lot more.
So I think your last question was just as important as your other ones.
Yeah.
It's the wrong question.
Yeah.
You can't say, what's most important. That's like saying, what book of the Bible is most important for you? Actually, I wrote a commentary on the Song of Solomon. That was my most interesting journey. And that was the favorite book of the medieval priests. They wrote more commentaries on the Song of Solomon, the one book in all the Bible that's dedicated to sex.
Yeah. And that was your first book?
No. I wrote that about 10 years ago or so.
And I think you raised a really important thing there, where you're empowering the person. Instead of asking the wrong question, empower the person to seek what resonates most for them, and that gives a lot of power back to the person. Instead of following like a sheep, you're saying, hey, where do you want to access information? It might be
Yeah.
my book, it might be over here, but use your own brain to start following, and exploring.
And here's an important point. You don't judge an author or an artist or a musician by one composition.
Mm.
You need to take that composition in the context of everything else they've said.
Mm.
And once again, that applies to Ellen White, but as
Yeah.
you said, I don't find any differences between Ellen White and the larger culture in what we need to do and
Yeah.
understand.
She created a symphony with her life that,
Yeah.
that you need to see in the big picture.
But the audience is full of Adventists with one string on their banjo.
Playing Deliverance.
With that, we better quit. My wife still likes me.
Hey, thanks so much.
Bye-bye
We'll catch you again down the road.
Okay. Bye-bye now, Peter, and
See ya.
the rest of you.
Thank you. And yeah, so many things to say, but I won't. I hope that a lot of you were able to listen and come up with your own kind of understandings of that conversation. Thanks again, Angela, for sponsoring today's program. I really appreciated it. And it's great to bring this season 2 up onto YouTube for the first time, so it can be seen publicly. Sadly, no longer available on Facebook or anywhere else. Season 2 is no longer available anywhere. I think even the links from a couple of the places that I did hold it have gone as well. I'll need to check on that. But it's interesting that these progressive Adventists, the historians, scholars, pastors, those who say, hey, that's not my Adventism, and say there's nothing to see here, you're asking the wrong questions, and what you find interesting is something different to someone else. Why do they then write a book reclaiming the prophet if they all think it is actually important to reclaim her in a certain light? What are they reclaiming her from? What kind of false notion did we all get about Ellen White that they are reclaiming and putting into context, into a proper perspective? And then when you challenge them and say, well, what is it that you're saying was taken wrong and out of context? It's like, oh, well, you're asking the wrong question. There's nothing to see here. I'm very interested in your thoughts on this rather than me expanding. Gospel Adventist writes a great little comment here. They are stretching when they attack the question instead of giving an answer. And several times I was saying, what is it that you believe happened, for example? And, well, I'm not interested in that. And, well, obviously you are, because you went from being a perfectionistic. George said right at the start, I'm going to be the most perfect Adventist there has ever been. Where did you get that notion? You got it because Ellen White promoted that, and to her dying days said, keep the Great Controversy book out there. It's so important. And even with subsequent slightly watered down versions, it is very clear that she taught, supported, and said was backed by God's visions, that you need to be ready to vindicate God, prove Satan's claim wrong, that you actually can keep the commandments. Adventism is marinated in perfectionism, absolutely marinated in it. A lot of the comments I wanted to bring that Gillian had written, Gillian Ford, where she was rightfully so, defending some of the subtle criticism of Des there. She wrote to me and said, look, essentially the SDA bent to perfectionism and a two-phase judgment. Those ideas come from Wesley because of his teaching on the second blessing. And the church doesn't examine this. That's a good point. And yeah, I think there is something to see here. And I think that the good guys, the Gospel Adventist guys, I'm not meaning you, Stephen Beagles, watching there, I know, but the progressive guys that want to reclaim Ellen and put her in perspective, I think one day they're going to have to realize that this is not my Adventism that they see, reveal, and desire to move away from because they want to reclaim Adventism. Bob Wolfgram said it would be better to call it revising the prophet. I agree. They're not reclaiming a kind of era of Ellen White's that was all gospel-focused, non-last generation theology, non-perfectionistic. You cannot reclaim something that never was. So one day these good guys that want to question the authority of Ellen White, they want to put her into perspective. They want to put her in the back of the bus as a devotional writer rather than a prophetic, inspired messenger of the Lord. They want to do that. They want to revise it. And the many good things that they've concluded, the way they approach health, the way they approach keeping the Sabbath, there's many things that the Gospel Adventist, the Progressive Adventist, does so well and has a lovely community. I am not attacking that or criticizing that. But I am clearly pointing out that I hope that one day you guys will wake up and realize this thing you are trying to reclaim never existed, and the little moments it shone, it never gained any traction. It never found a home in Adventism. The Adventism you progressives believe in, that is your special Adventism, is an anomaly. It's a whole other thing. It's a hybrid. It's not a pendulum swing. It's a different thing. It has its own pendulum swing, like the fundamentalists, historicists, traditional Adventists over here have. But it is something you can't reclaim because it never was. And so to say, oh, you're asking the wrong questions, or you're barking up the wrong tree, or you should be asking this, and then never really saying what it was, and I'm not really interested in that. You historians and scholars and academics, you revealed to us the perfectionistic nature of Ellen G. White, the authoritative voice that she had within the church. You revealed it with so many books. We saw her plagiarism. We saw her flawed character, which is fine. Be flawed. We're not criticizing that. But why do you hold on to this notion and are unable to jettison that maybe she didn't have visions, because there's so many she used to confirm this Adventism you're trying to reclaim that never existed? It's all unicorns and fairies down in the back garden. It never existed. In little pockets, it tried. You have to revise Adventism. Because what you guys believe in is a whole other theology. It is a whole other thing. And the sooner you realize that and start to try and preserve that and build some sovereign boundaries around that, you're just going to flip-flop around and come across as quite weak. So yeah, you guys that are attempting to reclaim the prophet, we're 45 years on from Glacier View. The church's last generation fundamentalist, historicist, traditional style of movement is stronger than ever. The cultural Adventists, sure. I ran into some cultural Adventists earlier today. Great people. They don't give two hoots about all this stuff. They just enjoy hanging out, happy Sabbaths and haystacks. Great, awesome. They've got some good pastoral care going on in their community, and maybe that's all that's needed. That's fine. But there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of adversarial stuff going on within Adventism, whether you want to see it or not. It is there. And it just trickles down all the time and hurts people all around the base. So deal with it. And these conversations are about creating a dialogue that actually, instead of attacking and deconstructing, challenges the listener, the viewer, to just try and resolve some of these issues, because they've been going on a long, long time. And they're not left and right. They're two religions, one wanting the other side out, the other side thinking that, no, you guys have got it wrong. We're just reclaiming what was always there, which never was. Anyway, that's me for the day. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Angela Lima, for sponsoring today. I really appreciate it. And let's go out with that wonderful comment that Pastor Brooks made about all of you former Adventists out there. Now, by the way, tomorrow I am interviewing James Headley, and we're going to be talking about how he used to be a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, and he left the church quite a number of years ago. And he's going to call the program An SDA Returns to the Reformation. So that's James Headley tomorrow, which will be Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on the next day, Danny Big will be talking about on Good News Fellowship. Her title is Created to Create. Can't wait for that. Until then, you former Adventists, take heed to this message from Pastor Brooks.
And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.